This will sound very strange, but the bombing of the Twin Towers, the attempt of the terrorists to bomb the Twin Towers in 1993, the Indian Ocean tsunami on the 26th of the month in 2004, the prophetic eclipse that passed over Indonesia on the 26th of the month in 2009, just a few days after Obama's inauguration, and he grew up in Indonesia, and the eclipse on the 26th of the month as part of the Tetrad in 1950, and 9/11, and the flooding in St. Louis on the 26th of the month in 2022, and the evacuation of 1,700 tourists in Petra, Jordan on the 26th of the month in 2022, and the release of the Return of the King, Lord of the Rings movie on the 26th of the month in 2003, and the death of Bishop Desmond Tutu on the 26th of the month in 2021, and the death of Kobe Bryant in a helicopter crash on the 26th of the month in 2020, are all part of a prophetic sign from the Christian God of the Bible that are predicting that a dirty bomb or a suitcase nuke will explode in Manhattan, New York City, and there will be a mass evacuation from Manhattan Island on the 26th of the month of September in 2023. And this is also a prophecy that is revealing that an asteroid will hit Earth on the 26th of the month of May in 2024, the date of the resurrection rapture event. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. All right, if you are just tuning in, this is your first video by chance. I have made probably about 50 videos explaining the prediction for the dirty bomb or suitcase nuke that will explode in Manhattan, and the prediction had been for September 25th. It was realized earlier this afternoon. Today is the 25th, and upon further thought, it was, well, not actually further thought. There was a particular prophetic sign that happened yesterday that inspired the new thinking, and that was the football game with the Miami Dolphins, which will be explained in another video. It is absolutely very profound and very important, even though it is a football game. If some of you think, well, why would God provide a serious prophetic sign through a football game, you would be mistaken. But anyway, it was inspired today to think that, or realize that God was actually pointing to the 25th because he's actually pointing to the Day of Atonement in the Hebrew calendar. And the Day of Atonement in the Hebrew calendar begins at sunset and goes to sunset the following day. In other words, it began at sunset today on the 25th, which was about an hour ago here, and in this time zone. And anyway, we are looking at the 26th. In fact, I am convinced that it is the 26th because there are so many profound connections, some of which you are looking at in this diagram right here, that confirm the matter. Now, it was already realized a while ago that God was using the date, the date of the month, the 26th, in a big picture of science, in a unique way. In other words, he was connecting, or he is connecting, major prophetic signs that occurred on the 26th of the month to other prophetic signs that occurred on the 26th of the month. And I have not seen this done in this manner for any other date. And the reason for him doing this on the 26th of the month is because Yahweh in gematria is equal to 26. In Hebrew gematria, the letters YHWH, which is the name of God in the Bible, add up to 26. And so, if you will, 26 is a number that symbolizes God's name. And this is the reason, the main reason for doing these signs on the 26th of the month. And so when we plug in September 26, 2023 into some of the other prophetic signs that occurred on the 26th of the month, we end up with some extremely profound results, many of which you are looking at in this diagram. Let's begin with the, in my opinion, obvious first one to look at, which was February 26th, 1993, which was the day of the bombing at the Twin Towers. The terrorists tried initially to take down the Twin Towers by bombing them. They drove a Ryder moving truck into the basement parking lot of, I think, the North Tower, and tried to they blew up. They did extreme serious damage to the parking lot. I forget how many deaths there were. And it's actually a quite interesting story that the building survived, because they basically blew out the foundation of the tower. But the building was constructed so well that it didn't matter. And anyway, that date was this date here. And it is an astonishing 11,170 days before this date here, September 26th, the predicted date for the bomb in New York City. So we have bomb in New York City connecting profoundly, extremely profoundly, to bomb in New York City. Now, why is 11,170 days extremely prophetic? There are two main reasons. There are actually three main reasons. Number one, this hints at 1,170. Sorry. If you take away the zero, it hints at 1,117. Sorry. And that is a number that God frequently uses in his signs, 1,117, because the 1,117th word in Strong's Hebrew Concordance is the word Bama, which means high place. It's actually a proper name. It's a place in Palestine, 1,100, or Palestine. 1,116 is lowercase Bama, which means high place. Both words mean high place. One is a proper noun. And that is because the name, proper noun, for Obama hints at this. And this is because Jesus said in Luke 10:18 that he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven, and the name Barak in Hebrew means lightning, and Bama in Hebrew means high place. And the word in Aramaic, the language Jesus would have spoken for from, is O. And so Barak Obama means lightning from heaven. Either Jesus didn't know what he was saying when he said this, or he knew what he was saying, but he said this anyway, knowing that it would confuse us, because he knew that there would be a famous president named Barack Obama, or he was revealing the identity of the Antichrist. Obviously, the latter option is the only one that makes any sense. And anyway, that's reason number one for why this number here is extremely prophetic. It identifies the Antichrist. Okay? Number two reason. This also hints at 1,170. 1,170 is the number of the lunation in the standard Brown's lunation nomenclature. So there was this guy named Brown in the early 20th century that invented this nomenclature for moon cycles, and every new moon is a new Brown's lunation. From the beginning of Brown's lunations, which God is using in his signs, by the way. The 1170th was the solar eclipse new moon that engendered the eclipse of all eclipses, the Great American Eclipse that passed over America in 2017. Now, I won't make this video into explaining that sign, and this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. It's extremely difficult to explain because everything that you explain requires second and third witnesses to confirm a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And so, the big picture of God's signs, which is only being explained on this channel, God's true big picture of signs, cannot be properly understood without their connections, the prophetic signs, the full intended meaning of the prophetic signs, cannot be properly understood without their connections and context with the other signs. It is the same as the Bible. The Bible is an interconnected web. One can take an infinite number of pathways through the Bible, and as a whole, it is what the whole of the Bible is what produces the Bible meaning, which is the same with God's signs. And so, my point here is that when you try to explain God's signs, one part of the web, you end up pulling the entire web with it. Because one thing requires second witnesses, and those things in turn require second witnesses and third witnesses, and then those things in turn require second witnesses and third witnesses to confirm a matter. But anyway, that's why I say I got to cut it off. If you don't know how prophetic the Great American Eclipse is, that's another subject for another video. And that scenario will be happening repeatedly throughout this video. Everything that you are looking at is a snapshot, a two-dimensional image of something that is three-dimensional. And so, bear in mind that everything that I'm going to be talking about, these dates, are way more profound than what you are seeing in this video because of the other connections, because the full intended meaning of these signs cannot be properly understood without the full explanation for the signs and their connections to other signs. That's how it works. And it is only being explained on this channel. Now, the extremely prophetic Great American Eclipse was the 1170th lunation. In Bible prophecy, the number 1260, and it is only a symbolic number. We are already well inside the final 1260 days, but that too is another subject for another video. And so this number occurs 7 times in Bible prophecy, and it regards the period of the end times and the Antichrist. And this is why the Antichrist will be defeated at the second coming, the return of Lord Jesus Christ, during the 1260th Browns lunation. And that is a second witness confirmation of the prophetic significance of the 1170th lunation, which is a second witness to this number right here, this number of days. Furthermore, 1170 is 3 sets of 390. Now, why is 390 a prophetic number? Well, that's going to take 5 confirmations to explain it, which I won't do. But it symbolizes God's return, because the 390th word in Strong's Greek New Testament Concordance is the word return. The Apostle James used this word when he quoted Amos 9:11 regarding the Lord's return to rebuild his temple at his second coming. And so that's why we have the prophetic Browns lunation on the 1170th lunation. One reason anyway It's because it hints at 3 sets of 390, and God frequently repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. And so, in other words, the Great American Eclipse was a sign communicating the return of the Lord, among many other things. One of the other things that it communicated was symbolically the number 117. And that is another reason why this is the third reason, because this hints at 117. Actually, there's 4 reasons. I'll give you the 4th in a second. It's just amazing. So 1,100, the Great American Eclipse peaked over St. Louis. It peaked over the middle of the country, beginning in St. Louis at 1:17 p.m. And it entered the nation and went over the capital of Oregon, Salem, at the same time that the sun set over Jerusalem in Israel after it came off of the and it entered the U.S. at 10:17 a.m., which also hinted at 117. And that is because the mark of the Antichrist, which is what the 2 eclipses that'll pass over each other, the other one being in 2024 when they engender an X, will symbolize the mark of the Antichrist. The middle date of the 2 eclipses was the first day of the mark of the Antichrist, December 14th, 2020. And you know what I mean. The thing that you can't talk about is the mark of the Antichrist. Well, that is symbolized by 117. It began in the 117th Congress, for example. And what you must do, and I recommend stopping this video here and coming back to this video, is watching the video titled Prediction Kamala Harris's Plane Crash on 10/17 equals October 17th equals eclipse peaks at 1:17 p.m. And that's why her plane will crash in St. Louis, by the way, on the date 10/17, because the eclipse peaked there at 1:17 p.m. But that isn't even scratching the surface of the essential foundational information in the video that I just mentioned. Okay, now the 4th reason for this number here is that God uses combinations of 1s and 7 to hint at Genesis 7:11, which is the verse in the account of Noah's flood in which the flood judgment began. And what we are talking about is the beginning of judgment in a way, you could say, a symbolic beginning of it anyway, because there have been other symbolic beginnings also. But anyway, this is the follow-up judgment to the 9/11 events in New York, this dirty bomb or suitcase nuke in New York, which will be judgment. And that's why this number right here, which hints at Genesis 7:11. Okay, and that's also why the mark of the Antichrist, for example, is symbolized by 117. Just for example, it also hints at Genesis 7:11. By the way, in the account of the flood, it says that the genetic line of the people that preceded the flood was corrupted. And that gives you more hint at what the mark of the Antichrist is. But you know what I'm talking about. The thing that you can't talk about. All right, now, this 11,170 days connection is also exactly 327 months. Now, the reason why this is prophetic, well, I just saw something that I didn't see before, which is the case. Every time you look at God's signs, something new comes out. But this actually hints at 27 divided by 3, which gives us 3 sets of 9. And the number 9 is the most important number in God's big picture of signs, which is why this is relevant, because as from the Bible, it symbolizes God's judgment. Okay, also, the number 327 is, and God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis. So 9 plus 9 plus 9. Major judgment here. That's what this is. The nuke or the predicted dirty bomb in New York City. So no wonder 9 plus 9 plus 9 we can find in this bombing in New York to bombing in New York sign. Now, 327 is the 73rd prime number, and God uses the number 73 to hint at 3 sets of 7. And God uses 3 sets of 7 symbolism frequently in his true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections because of the book of Joshua, which is the key to understanding the book of Revelation. And in Joshua, the Israelites marched around the walls of security before they collapsed in God's judgment after enacting a symbolic 3 sets of 7. They marched around once per day for 7 days. And then on the 7th day, they marched around 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. 3 sets of 7. Also, Joshua led the Israelites in this march and in symbolic 3 sets of 7, and he died at the age of 110. And the Twin Towers, which were attempted to be bombed on this date, are 110 stories, and they collapsed, just like the walls of security collapsed when Joshua led the Israelites around them. Okay, so also 73 is the 21st prime number, and that is also 3 sets of 7. So this connection right here is profound beyond words. Okay, so that's the first connection, and it took me only 20 minutes to explain it. All right, there is actually a 5th reason, which I almost didn't see, which is the obvious one of all. Reason for this number here is that we are talking about the Day of Atonement. Again, this is the reason why God was pointing to the 25th and why I made 50 videos explaining how God was pointing to the 25th, but that's because the Day of Atonement begins at sunset on the 25th. But the Day of Atonement is the 10th day of the 7th month. And that's what's hinted at with this number, with this combination of 1s and a 7. The 10th day of the 7th month. In God's signs, depending on the context, the number 17 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. The Day of Atonement. And furthermore, the Antichrist will be defeated on the Day of Atonement, which is, and the Antichrist in the book of Revelation is described using a metaphor of a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, for which the number 17 also symbolizes. So, also, there's a 6th and a 7th reason, which I didn't even see. Okay. It just goes on and on. So on 9/11, it was Flight 11 that hit the North Tower, followed 17 minutes later with the second plane that hit the South Tower. So that's why we have the 11,000 followed by a comma, or the number 11 followed by the comma and the 17. There were also there was a crew of 11 people on Flight 11 as well. The Twin Towers looked like a giant 11, and on and on. In New York State, the 11th state. This is because Jesus coined the phrase the 11th hour, which in ancient Israel referred to the last hour of daylight before darkness. And in English is an idiom that means last chance. Time is running out, as in last chance for the nation to repent and turn back to God, which is what this judgment is signifying, that this opportunity is now over. Okay, and what was the other one? Oh yeah, Barack Obama, 11 and 17, because the Antichrist is described in Zechariah 11:17. God calls the Antichrist in that chapter 11:17 his worthless servant. Barack Obama released his long-anticipated autobiography, A Promised Land, on the date 11/17. And again, 11/17 hints at Bama, 1117, that's why. And also the first mention of the word owl in the Bible is in Leviticus 11:17. And Barack Obama is known for being a night owl. It was in stark contrast with his predecessor, George Bush, who was known for being an early bird, which all the more highlighted the relevance of him being a night owl, a creature of the night, because he is the Antichrist. So that's also why we have this 11 and 17 in this number. But again, big one here, Day of Atonement, 10/17. So, all right, now, this is the bombing of the towers. They collapsed on 9/11. God uses the number 191 as symbolism for 9/11, and it is exactly 191 months to this date, January 26th, 2009. The date 126 hints at 1260, which again is the number I just mentioned a minute ago, being the number in the Bible that symbolizes the end times and period of the Antichrist. That is because this date here was 2 times 3 days after the inauguration of the Antichrist, who played basketball in high school and wore jersey 23. And so that's the reason for the 2 times 3 days between his inauguration and this eclipse. 2 times 3 equals, or hints at 23, but also 2 divided by 3 equals 666, or 0.666. And on, actually. I got to get moving. In fact, I don't even think I'll have time to finish this. It's getting too late here. But anyway, this was the eclipse that only passed over Indonesia and traversed over the Indian Ocean in the manner in which the Indian Ocean tsunami, the waves of the earthquake from Indonesia traversed over the Indian Ocean. Okay, so the eclipse that passed over America, the Great American Eclipse, only passed over America. It was the only eclipse to do so since 1776, coincidentally, the year America was founded. And 1776 is 4 times 444, and the Antichrist is the 44th president, who was inaugurated 2 times 3 days earlier on this eclipse. And the 44th president grew up in Indonesia for 4 years. And this is why this eclipse in Indonesia, that points to Barack Obama. And this is just scratching the surface. Like I'm saying, it's an interconnected web, and I really got to move on. I apologize. This isn't going to be a full video explaining everything. I have to move on. Now, this eclipse, that's Obama symbolism, is 11 years to this exact years, to this 126 date, which also hints at 1260, like I just explained. And in turn, it is 44 months. The 44th president is hinted at with that to the date it is predicted that the dirty bomb will explode in Manhattan. On this day, there were 9 deaths in the helicopter that exploded on the mountain, a high place, Bama, in California, with Kobe Bryant on board. Kobe hints at, CVD disease, and that's what it sounded out like in Hebrew. And the helicopter took off at 9 a.m., and helicopters have blades that are looking like an X, which is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. The 2 eclipses that will pass over each other, over America, will engender an X. X's are about the midpoint, and the mid-date was the first date of the mark of the Antichrist. Anyway, in God's signs, he pairs certain numbers together to provide second witnesses, and one such pair of numbers he pairs together is 9 and 44. Also, obviously, he pairs 9 and 11 to hint at the 9/11 sign, and furthermore, this in turn connects with 191 months back to this bombing of the towers which collapsed on 9/11. This is another extremely profound connection here that is confirming that the dirty bomb or suitcase nuke will explode in New York City tomorrow on September 26th. All right, speaking of the number 73, which I just explained, this date is exactly 73 years after this eclipse, which was a lunar eclipse that coincided. It was part of the blood moon tetrad that coincided with the rebirth of Israel. This was the last of them, meaning it's the more prophetic of them, or at least the first and second ones are the prophetic ones typically of the tetrads. Anyway, this eclipse was exactly 25 weeks after this extreme extremely prophetic date, which was the day that the UN Trustee Council officially recommended making Jerusalem an international city, which is the biggest transgression against God's plan described in Bible prophecy that the world will attempt to do, led by the Antichrist Barack Obama. 25,000 is mentioned 14 times in the book of Ezekiel as the main dimensional number of the rebuilt temple in the Messianic age after Jesus returns. But also Barack Obama will become the president again through the use of the 25th Amendment. But also, importantly, 25 is the 9th semi-prime number. And God uses semi-prime numbers, and the prediction being made in this video will prove everything that I'm saying. And that is the purpose of this prediction in the video, that the reason why God has given me a voice, this prediction that is from God, is to prove the controversial things that I am saying, including, for example, what I just said earlier about what the mark of the Antichrist is, and the second coming being on the Day of Atonement in 2024. Case closed when the prediction comes to pass. The controversy is ended. No more debate. If you don't appreciate that, you have missed entirely the purpose of this prediction that is from God. Now, this connection of 25 weeks is also exactly 4,200 hours, and that's a number that symbolizes the Antichrist in Bible prophecy, and it is a period of time in Bible prophecy, hence 4,200 hours. And this is also the equivalent of 252,000, which is hinting at 2,520, the number of a period of time in the most central prophecy in the Bible, Daniel chapter 9, that regards the period of the end times and the Antichrist. Anyway, this date 44 hints at the 44th president, and it's exactly 23 years. Obama wore jersey number 23 and will become the president again in 2023, before the date 44 in 1973, which was the official opening of the Twin Towers, which collapsed on 9/11. All right. Now, this eclipse here is exactly 700 months before the Indonesia eclipse that pointed to Barack Obama, which is in turn exactly 7 times 7 months back, or after the Indian Ocean tsunami. So, this Indonesian eclipse, Indonesian tsunami. I didn't put the date here. I forgot. This is December 26, 2004. This is the date of the Indian Ocean tsunami. It's exactly 7 times 7 months before the Indian Ocean eclipse and Indonesia eclipse, which is 700 months after this prophetic lunar eclipse here. This gives us a 3 sets of 7. Furthermore, the 3 sets of 7 in Joshua is a 7 followed by a 7 times 7. 7 times once per day for 7 days. And then on the 7th day, 7 times, 7 trumpets. 7 times 7. 7, and then 7 times 7. It's also the Omer count, if you know what I'm talking about. The 7 days from Passover to Feast of First Fruits, and then 7 times 7 days to Pentecost. All right. Now, where are we? Let's go back here though first. This Indonesia eclipse is exactly 4 times 44 months, which hints at the 44th president. And again, this is what the eclipse is for pointing to the Antichrist 44th president who grew up in Indonesia for 4 years. So that's what's hinted at with 4 times 44, 4 years, 44th president. To the date it is predicted that this suitcase nuke or dirty bomb will explode in New York City. Okay? Now, where else? Let's go down here now. This Indian Ocean tsunami connects with exactly 926 weeks to the date 926, which in turn connects to this date 926. With 4 plus 4 plus 4 months exactly. 1 year is 4 plus 4 plus 4 months, which hints at the 44th president. This was the day of the Nord Stream pipeline explosions, which are hinting at the explosions, and I think there will be 2, in fact. That's why there were 2 pipeline explosions. And this was also the day of the NASA probe that exploded on the double 2 asteroids, DART, double asteroid redirection test. They tried to deflect the asteroid on the same day. The double asteroid on the same day that the 2 pipelines exploded was the NASA explosion on the 2 asteroids, which hints at the 2 dirty bombs in New York City. Anyway, why 926 and the date 926? Well, there's a good reason for that. I'm just going to read from Strong's Concordance, the 926th word in Strong's Greek New Testament Concordance. All right, this is the word here. It means to disturb, alarm, terrify, hurry, be disturbed, be anxious, be afraid, be hurried, be nervous. This is exactly the reaction of people to the dirty bomb in Manhattan. This will be the reaction tomorrow to the predicted dirty bomb or suitcase nuke explosion in Manhattan tomorrow. This will also be the reaction of the nation, furthermore, and probably the world. All right. The first use of this word is in Genesis when the brothers of Joseph were told by Joseph that he is Joseph, their brother, if you know the story. Anyway, it's a very important story in the Bible, and there is a pattern of God using the first instances of words in the Bible for further symbolic meaning. But the brothers were terrified, trembling inside when they heard the news. Okay, because they tried to kill him earlier. Okay, so that's quite profound. And that is the reason for this 926 weeks exact connection to the explosions. That was an unnerving event, especially if you relied on the supply of oil from Russia, as did the Europeans. Anyway, and also the double asteroid, that's also a prophetic sign. It's pointing to the asteroid hit, which will be the same reaction when the asteroid hits on this date here. Exactly 4 plus 4 months after the explosions in Manhattan will be the explosion of the asteroid on Earth on the date May 26th, 2024, which will also be the day of the resurrection rapture. It is Pentecost in the calendar that watches for new moons. This is by no means the only confirmation of this for this date. I have pages and pages full of information regarding the confirmation for what I just said. Now, but this connection wasn't paid attention to until today, because I wasn't looking at this date until today. I was looking at the 25th, because God was pointing to the 25th, but I didn't get why he was pointing to the Day of Atonement. He was pointing to both dates. And I should have realized that. But anyway, had I realized that, though, I no doubt I would have been focused on this date because of the connections to the 26th of the month, because I know how important that is. And had I been focused on this date, I wouldn't have uncovered all of the amazing things that God did to connect to the 25th. And that's why I believe God blinded me to seeing the 26th, so that I would finish the work that needed to be done, explaining how he was pointing to the 25th. Because someone else would have easily seen the 26th. Knowing what I knew, they would have seen the 26th and would have concluded it was the 26th. Well, anyway, let's move on. I don't know how can I understand how God works. It's a mystery, right? He knows way more than I do. But that's my small little speculation on why I didn't see the 26th, okay? Now, this date here, the Indian Ocean tsunami, is also exactly 60 plus 60 plus 60 months. And again, Indonesia is where the Antichrist grew up, the 44th president, for 4 years. And so the Indian Ocean tsunami was the result of an earthquake in Indonesia or just off the coast. Anyway, this is Antichrist symbolism. It gets us to this Barack Obama date here, the 26th of December in 2019, which was the day of the prophetic helicopter crash on the Nepali coast of beautiful Kauai, the Garden Island. Oh, It's just amazing. I didn't realize that before, because garden is symbolism for the Antichrist because of Genesis chapter 3. Wow. So I know that because I used to live in Hawaii and on Oahu and would take trips over to Kauai, my favorite island. The Garden Island is the nickname of Kauai. And, well, anyway, this helicopter killed 7 people. God's signature number. It would also connect it to the 7 people that died in the flash flood in Hell's Gate Canyon shortly before this date in 2019, and on and on. Okay? Interconnected web, but you can't pull on it too hard because you'll pull the entire web, okay? But anyway, it was the safari tours. Obama was born in Kenya, known for its safaris. He was born in the savannah of Kenya, furthermore. The Kenyan savannah area of Kenya, which is where Hell's Gate Canyon is. And anyway, yeah, I won't. I'm so tempted to just go off and explain the Hell's Gate Canyon flash flood. But anyway, safari tours. That was the name of the company of the helicopter crash. And again, helicopters are symbolism for the mark of the Antichrist. One reason being the rotor blades that are an X. But also God is using helicopters in his signs to symbolize dragons, or a dragon, which is symbolic of the Antichrist in Revelation chapter 12, that tries to drown God's people with a flash flood. And in that chapter, the dragon uses his tail, and that's why the helicopters, because of their tails, and there, in fact, has even been a helicopter sign that was in Hawaii that was all about its tail, for that matter. But anyway, Obama is from Hawaii and Indonesia, both islands in the sea, and the Antichrist comes out of the sea in Revelation chapter 13. But that is only symbolism because that particular Antichrist is the first one, and that's Pope Francis. But God mixes the symbolism around. That's one thing that you need to appreciate if you are a student of God's prophetic signs. You you really need to have a mind for symbolism. It's fluid, and the symbolism overlaps all over. But it's discernible. You just need to be open-minded. You can't be dogmatic about something. And when you do, you miss something. When you are. Well, anyway, this is exactly 45 months before the prediction, and 45 is the 9th triangular number, and the number 9 is the most important number, and Barack Obama will skip the 45th presidency, just like the only other president to serve non-consecutive terms skipped the 23rd presidency, and Obama wore jersey 23, and 23 is the 9th prime number. And on and on and on and on and on. Michael Jordan wore number 45 because of it's all part of that, what I just said. Okay, let's move on before I explain too much. This date here, that'll be the follow-up judgment to 9/11, will be exactly 1,150 weeks after 9/11. Exactly. It'll be a Tuesday, and this will be a Tuesday. One reason why I thought it was the 25th and was blinded to the 26th is because of, for example, although it was known the 25th long before, but Jimmy Buffett died on the date September 1st, and he has a song famous for Come Monday, and God used it to point to the 25th, which was a Monday, and also the following Monday, which was September 4th. But anyway, I'm going off onto a tangent. Make sure you watch the Jimmy Buffett video. It's amazing. Now, 1,150 is a very, very prophetic number regarding the Antichrist in Daniel chapter 8, and it is a period of time, 1,150 days, and in fact, Antiochus Epiphanes is alluded to there as symbolism. He was on the, well, no, I take that back. I apologize. The prophecy was written before Antiochus Epiphanes, and the Dead Sea Scrolls prove that, but Antiochus Epiphanes is a type or a foreshadow for the Antichrist, and he set up the abomination on the Temple Mount for 1,150 days. That's actually a fact from history. And scholars that don't believe the Bible is inspired conclude that prophecy must have been written afterwards, but it wasn't. But anyway, the point is that this definitely is a number that symbolizes the Antichrist. And we have this exact number of weeks. What is also very interesting, though, is that it is the equivalent of 8,050 days, 8,050 days. And Barack Obama moved to Chicago in 1985. The Chicago 85 Bears are extremely prophetic in God's signs. They visited him at the White House exactly 13 years before the Day of Atonement, when the Antichrist will be defeated in 2024. They visited Obama at the White House on the Day of Atonement in 2011. And 13 years because that team, the 85 Bears, only lost one game in their season, and that was during week 13. It was because of the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, player number 13, and the Miami Dolphins were the only team that ever had a perfect record. The Bears almost did, except the Dolphins beat them. And their perfect record, the Dolphins, was 13 years earlier, and when they won the Super Bowl, it was player number 13 that was the MVP. And anyway, that's scratching the surface for the number 13 years from the 85 Bears. Okay, there's lots more to say regarding that, but that's why this hints at Barack Obama. All right, and the 85 Bears also, by the way, began a 30-year cycle in Chicago when all of the sports teams in Chicago won their championships, ending with the breaking of the curse of the Billy Goat, Antichrist curse symbolism, when the Chicago Cubs won the World Series in 2016, 30 years after the Bears won in 86, the Super Bowl. 30 years in the Bible symbolizes a king. David and Joseph were made kings at the age of 30, and the Cubs visited Obama 4 days before he left office, and they presented him with jersey number 44. So right before he left office was the completion of the 30-year cycle of Chicago, where Obama is from. Now, just to finish up this diagram quickly, 9 months, the number 9 is the most important number. When asked by his disciples for the signs to look for of his return, Jesus replied with the metaphor of birth pains. And according to the, so 9 months is the average human gestation period, and hence 9-month connections are not only symbolic of judgment, but also the birth pains of the end times and the Antichrist before the Lord's return. Exactly 9 months back was this date here, which was the day that 1,700, not 17,000, that's a typo, 1,700 tourists were evacuated. There will be an evacuation of Manhattan Island, it's predicted. Okay, 1,700 tourists were evacuated from Petra, Jordan, and it is believed that due to a flash flood, and it is believed that God's people will be hiding in Petra, Jordan, when the dragon in Revelation chapter 12 will attempt to drown them with a flash flood. Okay, so that's very prophetic, and the reason why is because God pairs 9 and 17 together in his signs to confirm the signs and connections. One reason being, the Antichrist was president from 2009 until 2017, and the walls of security collapsed the security walls of Jerusalem were breached by the Babylonians and then the Romans on the 9th of Tammuz and the 17th of Tammuz, the month of Tammuz in the Hebrew calendar. Anyway, exactly 5 months. 5 months is because the duration of the flood in the Genesis account is 5 months, and exactly 5 months back was this extremely prophetic flood in St. Louis, where Kamala Harris's plane is predicted to crash on October 17th. And just going through this quickly, in that sign, there were 70 rescues by firefighters, and the section of the I-70 closed right where it joins with the U.S. Highway 370, which also hints at 3 sets of 7. And St. Louis was within the path of totality I should say the 70-mile wide path of totality of the eclipse, and so that's 3 sets of 7. Furthermore, the eclipse is parallel with the I-70 highway, and that's why we have this 7 plus 7 months exactly from this flood to the day of the predicted dirty bomb or suitcase nuke. But this 7 plus 7 months is also amazingly exactly 117% of a year. And again, as I explained earlier, St. Louis is all about the number 117 because the eclipse peaked there at 1:17 p.m. It's absolutely amazing. And by the way, Kamala Harris's flight path will mirror the flight path of Flight 77 on 9/11, and that is because 77 is 11 times 7, which hints at 117. Okay, there's a couple more things actually. The date of the predicted dirty bomb in Manhattan is exactly 3 sets of 7 months after the death of Desmond Tutu on December 26th, 2021. He died at the age of 90. There's much to be said about this. This is really a sign for other context. However, I included it anyway. It does connect back in this diagram anyway, but it does connect back exactly 6 plus 6 plus 6 years, which is also 6 times 6 times 6 months, to the date of the release of the Return of the King, Lord of the Rings movie that won a record, I forget how many Grammy Awards. But so this is a sign for another video anyway also. But well, it really is relevant because out of this somehow the Antichrist will rise. Somehow this crisis will be part of the path that will bring about the Antichrist. And Desmond Tutu is Antichrist symbolism. He's Mr. UN. He coined the phrase the Rainbow Nation. And on and on. I've gone into much detail about Desmond Tutu in another video anyway, so I'll just leave it at that. But he became famous because of his theological degree that he earned from King's College. That's why the connection to the Return of the King movie, by the way. All right, now this is also sort of relevant too. Well, now the 22 months makes it extremely relevant, and so this proves everything that I'm saying. Somehow this is Antichrist. We don't know yet exactly. This is part of the Antichrist system. Furthermore, in Bible prophecy, it says that the Antichrist system is handed to the Antichrist. It's already in place. It's handed to the Antichrist. The Antichrist does not create the Antichrist system. And so anyway, this is the date of the official naming of the OME CRON. You know what I'm talking about? OME CRON. The World Health Organization named it on this day. And the number 22 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, because the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist would have been described in Ezekiel chapter 9, which would have been a Tav mark in ancient Hebrew. And the Tav letter is the last letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and it is the 22nd letter. And the mark of the Antichrist is described in the last book of the Bible, which is the 22nd out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. And so that's why 22 months from this sign is extremely prophetic or relevant. Therefore, this is definitely somehow leading to the Antichrist. All right. Furthermore, we have the 4 plus 4 months, which hints at the 44th president also from this, to the rapture, the escape from the Antichrist and the severe persecution. So, you know, this is very, very, very important in the process of the Antichrist coming to power. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus, please leave a like and upvote the video. And once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more. Don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the BitChute.com or the Odyssey.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.